Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. In today's lecture, we are going to cover 1 week's current affairs related to the subject of social issues. If you have been following this lecture series, you know this pretty much by now, that we cover 1 week's current affairs in one lecture related to a particular subject. So on Mondays, we cover economics related current affairs, on Tuesdays, polity, Wednesday, IR, Thursday, geography environment, Friday, social issues, and Saturdays, science and technology. Now, today, science and technology current affairs were not so abundant. That is why we are covering social issues today. But long story cut short, today we are going to cover social issues related current affairs from the past 1 week. Okay. Now, needless to say this, you have to make this lecture series a part of your daily routine because through that, you'll be regular with your current affairs, well versed in current affairs, plus you'll get to cover current affairs subject wise. That way, it will be easier for you to integrate these current affairs with your static subjects as well. Okay, so make it a part of your daily routine. Make it a daily habit of yours. All right then, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away dive into the lectures. So let's begin. So current affairs, social issues, June 2026, part 5. And here are the topics that we are going to cover. Topic number 1 is climate change as a regressive tax, how climate change disproportionately impacts poor people. Okay. Then we'll talk about integrated criminal justice system. Basically, government is introducing digital tools in our criminal justice system so that it becomes more efficient. Police functioning becomes more efficient. Court functioning, judicial systems become more efficient. So this is there. And in the end, we'll talk about, well, India's demographic turn. India's population has been rising. India is the most populous country in the world. Now it has plateaued. And soon after 15-20 years, it will start to decline. So it is a very, very novel thing that is happening to India. India has always seen population explosion. This is the first time we are witnessing our population stabilization. Okay, so we have to talk about this. Okay, and what sort of impact it will have. So this is the third topic. So these are the 3 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one. Starting with topic number 1, and that is climate change as a regressive tax. Now look, climate change has led to various climate-related disasters. Now the intensity of these disasters and the frequency of these disasters, whether it's floods, droughts, cyclones, heavy rainfall, torrential downpour, cloud bursts, landslides, all these have increased because of climate change. Now, the impact or the consequences of this high frequency, these high intensity, high frequency climate related disasters are so many. The impact, I mean, there are so many consequences. One consequence is the financial burden it adds to the lives of people. Okay, because of these disasters, well, people lose their livelihoods, their houses. There are so many diseases, their health expenditure increases. So there is a financial component attached to these disasters. Yes. Now, a recent study has found out that the financial component is disproportionately high on poor people than rich people. Okay. Poor people face higher financial burden as compared to rich people when it comes to these climate related disasters. This is a form of tax on poor people. And because this tax, this financial burden is not so high on rich people, it is being termed as a regressive tax. Regressive tax is that tax whose financial burden is high on poor people and less on rich people. Progressive tax is the opposite. People generally encourage progressive taxes because rich need to pay more and poor people need to pay less. But regressive tax is a different, opposite thing, bad thing. Now, the financial burden caused by climate change is kind of a regressive tax on people, which means poor people are facing the brunt of this financial burden. Now, how so? And how we can protect these vulnerable sections of our society from this? Let's talk about this, okay? So, climate change as a regressive tax. So, the context was, in classic public economics, a regressive tax is a tax that takes a larger percentage of income from low income than from high income. So, this is the definition of regressive tax. Now, climate change related financial burden is acting like a regressive tax. And this was basically opined by UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Now, how does this happen? Okay, how can or how does climate change disproportionately impact poor people more? So take a look at this chart. Okay, now if you take a look at this chart, you can see, let me change the color of this. Yeah. So there is a climate related disaster. Now, rich people reside in protected areas, whereas poor people reside in slums or unprotected areas where there are not good water sanitation facilities, electricity facilities. So these floods or drought-like situation or these cloudbursts impact the dwellings of poor people more than rich people. Rich people have good drainage systems, everything is working for them. So, excuse me, there is disproportionate impact on poor people. Okay. Plus, well, the thing is that if that climate related disaster is causing more diseases, well, they bear the brunt of higher health expenditure. Now, the thing is, because the financial burden on poor people is high, but the poor people do not have that much money, so they take debt and they are trapped in this debt trap and recovery trap also. Whenever the repair works begin, when an area is destroyed by climate related disasters, it first starts to repair the important rich areas and then the poor areas get their turn. So this is happening. So reason number one is that poor people have limited coping capacity, and then once the area is destroyed, well, they face higher financial burden. Okay, so it is pretty logical. Now, let's talk about specific things. Okay, how climate raises cost of living for poor people more. Okay, let's talk about specific. I gave you a general idea that financial burden is disproportionately high on poor people. Now, let's talk about specifics. So, first of all, whenever there is a climate related disaster, food supply gets destroyed. Yes. Now, when supply is low, demand is high, there is high inflation. When there is high food inflation, well, it is generally said that 40 to 55% of Indian households spend their entire monthly income on food only. They are that poor. Many Indian households are that poor that they can only afford their monthly food ration. Now, if food becomes expensive, their entire budget gets thrown out for a toss. Okay, so this happens to poor people through food inflation. Whereas rich people, extremely rich people spend around 1 to 2% of their monthly budget on food. So if that 2% becomes 3% or 4%, they are not that much impacted. Poor people are. Okay, so this is reason number one. Then number two, energy strain and thermal divide. Because of climate change, there is heat wave like conditions. Okay, now rich people live in insulated households. Okay, their roofs are paved, everything is proper, so the heat waves don't impact them that much. Plus they have very good energy saving appliances also. Their ACs are more energy efficient, whereas people dwelling in slums, they have well, tin roofs or metal based roofs. Heat waves impact them more. Okay, and if they can afford a cooling device like an AC or a cooler, well, those are not that energy efficient because, well, they are cheaper versions of the appliances, right? So their electricity bill is high. Plus, because of heat wave, their labor productivity is also very low, because when you are suffering from heat wave, your body is not that productive when it comes to manual work. Your body is already tired, so their labor productivity declines. Their electricity bill increases. This is another financial burden. Then, well, rich households live in those areas where there is proper pipe drinking water. There is no water scarcity. Well, they have enough water to even water their big lawns. Whereas poor people reside in those areas where there are not proper pipe drinking water, so that they are dependent on these illegal or informal tankers that supply water. So this gives a rise to tanker economy. And well, these are informal, therefore not good safety standards are also followed in these the water that is carried by these tankers. So this is there. Plus, healthcare and out of pocket expenditure. Many of the poor people lack, well, formal health insurance. Therefore, they go to these clinics, pay out from their pockets. And whenever there is a climate related disaster that causes diseases, because during floods or any climate related disaster, well, diseases are, I mean, there are high chances of diseases spreading out. Yes. Now it adds the healthcare cost burden on these poor people as well. Okay. So these are the specific examples. Now, I have shared this table in your notes also. Clear? So vulnerable sections of society is in column number 1. The threat faced by them is column number 2. And the consequence of that threat is column number 3. For example, first vulnerable group is marginalized castes, tribes, Dalits, Adivasis. These people are geographically, most of them, forced into exposed areas like low-lying urban floodplains or degraded forests. They lack the title deeds, formal property registration documents, or social capital needed to secure formal bank loans, cutting them off from post-disaster rebuilding. Then women cultivators. Agrarian water scarcity and distress driven out male migration to urban hubs. The thing is, there is feminization of agriculture that is happening. Why? Because from rural areas, males are migrating to cities in search for work. Females are left behind, and because females are left behind, they are the ones who are working on the farms. So this is the reason. Now, these females bear a heavy triple burden: managing falling crop yields, handling domestic labor, and spending unpaid hours walking to gather water because they don't have access to pipe drinking water. So this is there. And urban informal gig workers. Okay, gig workers or construction workers, informal workers. Well, in urban areas, because of urban heat island effect, during summers, there is severe heat wave like situation. But these people have to still work there. So they suffer from heat stroke and many other problems, okay, health problems. So do take a look at this table. This would come in really handy while writing mains answers on this topic. Okay. Now, policy pitfalls. Okay. What mistakes are committed by the government to solve this problem? The government wants to solve this problem, but the tools it is employing actually harms poor people more. What happens? Well, to solve this problem of climate change, government levies carbon tax. Okay. To stop greenhouse gas emissions, government levies extra tax on fuel, petrol, diesel, domestic fuels. Okay. Now, this is a flat tax. That means rich people also have to pay this much tax on petrol, and poor people also have to pay this much tax. Now, poor people have very limited monthly budget. Rich people have humongous budget. They don't mind paying these taxes, but poor people do. So again, it is a form of these flat taxes on petrol, diesel. To reduce consumption of petrol, diesel, well, they add disproportionate burden on poor people. It is a form of regressive tax. Okay. Then government is providing flat subsidies also on electric vehicles or solar appliances. Again, government wants to promote the usage of EVs and rooftop solar power plants, right? Government wants to promote that so that less greenhouse gases are emitted. Okay. But most of these items, electric vehicles, rooftop solar power plants, these are consumed by rich people. So look at this policy. Government is taxing that item which is mostly consumed by poor people and subsidizing that item which is mostly consumed by rich people. This is again a regressive policy, though this policy is aimed at solving the crisis of climate change, but still it is having the opposite effect. Not the opposite effect, it will reduce greenhouse gases, but it is regressive in nature. It is adding more burden on poor people. So what should be the way forward? Well, to transition from climate vulnerability to climate equity, India's governance framework must shift towards targeted, progressive, not regressive climate protection. First of all, well, when we levy these green carbon taxes, green subsidies, they are part of Government of India's budget. And this section of our budget, which focuses on climate change, is known as green budget. So this green budgeting practice needs to also take into account equity concerns. Okay, that what impact is it having on poor people? So your entire budgeting process needs to take into account not just the green consequences, but also the social equity consequences. And make sure that the taxes that you are levying, green taxes, are also distributed to poor people more than rich people. Okay. Then decoupling welfare from property documentation. There are various government welfare schemes that are given to poor people, but poor people have to show some proof, and that proof is their property document. Now, there are many landless people who do not possess such documents. So our welfare schemes need to take into account these people as well. Plus, we need to expand public infrastructure safety nets, more welfare schemes that are specifically targeted towards poor people. Because with climate change, these people are going to be even more vulnerable. Okay, so government needs to create a safety net for them. Make sense, right? This was a long topic. But yeah, that's about it. Now let's move on to second news item, and that is integrated criminal justice system. Now, the recently Ministry of Home Affairs came out with various applications, apps to make our criminal justice system even more efficient and take it online. So we are taking our criminal justice system online. We are introducing digital initiatives, digital apps that would basically make it more efficient. Now, first of all, you need to be familiar with the term criminal justice system. Now, what is criminal justice system? The entire system that takes care of crime. So when there is crime, police comes into action, right? Law and order agencies, they are part of criminal justice system. And once you catch a criminal, then you produce him in a court. The courts are part of criminal justice system. In that court, well, lawyers are fighting the case. Okay, now there is one lawyer from the police's side who is arguing the case on behalf of police. That is known as the public prosecutor. He is also part of the criminal justice system. So this entire system is basically criminal justice system. Now, more often than not, this criminal justice system has been criticized for being very less efficient. Okay, there are so many loopholes, so many problems. So the government of the day decided to introduce digital applications into this system so as to make it more efficient. This has been the mantra of the current government. They think that the digital initiatives would solve a lot of problems and make our entire public administration more efficient. So this is their thought process, and they have decided to introduce this thought process in our criminal justice system also. So recently, Ministry of Home Affairs has launched a few apps. So we'll talk about those apps. What will those apps do? What are going to be the benefits of this? And yes, these digital initiatives are being criticized a little also. So we'll talk about those criticisms also, because we need to know everything as UPSC aspirants. So let's talk about this. So integrated criminal justice system. So in June 2026, Ministry of Home Affairs rolled out a major digital upgrade by launching 4 advanced applications built by National Crime Records Bureau. Okay, so National Crime Records Bureau built these 4 apps: Abhigyan, CRPI, E-Prosecution 2.0, E-Forensics 2.0. Okay, this launch serves as a primary technological engine to reform our criminal justice system. Now, the criminal justice system starts from an FIR to the final Supreme Court appeal, to the final proceedings in the court. From FIR stage to the final stage, the entire system is criminal justice system. So, the ICJS ecosystem. ICJS stands for Integrated Criminal Justice System. Okay, so the first stage is the police stage. Then police conducts investigations. So this is the forensic stage. After conducting the investigation, the police gathers a lot of evidence. That evidence has to be presented in the court, and a public prosecutor argues on the behalf of police that this evidence points to the fact that this person is guilty. So this is the prosecution stage, and then there is the court stage. All of this is being digitized. Okay, now what are the applications that have been launched? So 4 landmark digital applications have been launched. Okay, number 1, National Crime Records Bureau Abhigyan. It is a specialized mobile app that links field officers directly to National Automated Fingerprint Identification System. Now, this NAFIS database contains 1.3 crore fingerprints of suspected people. So whenever police people are conducting investigations on the field, they have this mobile app to check the fingerprints on the spot online. Okay, this is there. Then CRPI application. It transitions law enforcement past single biometric records, integrating facial recognition, iris matching, and DNA. So we have DNA databases of various criminals, iris database, facial recognition database. All of this has been combined into this single application. Then e-forensics. There are so many forensics labs, okay, for scientific investigation. Now, all these forensics labs have been integrated via a single application. So this is there. And e-prosecution. Well, this is an app that links police investigators, state public prosecutors, the lawyers, and the judiciary on one single app so that they can communicate better. Okay, this is the entire thing. Now, this is the table that shows that India has created a huge digital database to aid criminal justice system. Like we have Crime and Criminal Tracking Network System, CCTNS system, ePrisms platform, which contains the database of all prisons in India, centralized database, Crime Act portal. So all the investigative agencies are on this portal. MAC, multi-agency center. Okay, so that all law and order agencies, sometimes National Investigation Agency, NIA, which investigates terrorist cases, needs police cooperation, local police cooperation, right? Or intelligence sharing. This happens through MAC portal. So we have already huge databases or huge digital public infrastructure to aid criminal justice. Now let's talk about the criticism part. Okay. So in the first column is the advantage of these tech initiatives. Second column talks about how this is going to be done. And the third column talks about how many people can think that it is a violation of constitution. So I'll give you an example. Scientific drive for conviction. Shift the focus of evidence from unreliable oral testimonies to DNA fingerprints. So you're not going to rely on oral testimonies, you're going to rely on fingerprints or evidence. This is a violation of Article 20, Clause 3, which is protection against self-incrimination, because you'll be forcing a suspect to give their fingerprints. Then eradication of file delay. Replaces slow manual paperwork with instant app-based work. Now, this increases state surveillance, data privacy risks. Okay, this again creates, well, data privacy issues. So basically, the biggest criticism of all these initiatives, all these apps is data privacy and state surveillance. That the government is going to use this network to track whatever each and every citizen is doing. Okay, now this is something dangerous. Now, what should be the way forward? I mean, how can we take the benefits of these digital initiatives and keep at bay the harms like data privacy, surveillance and all? So enforcing a robust data deletion protocol. Once it has been proven that this person is not guilty, their fingerprint, their iris should be deleted permanently. Okay, then upgrading local forensics capacities. Because some of our forensic labs, which are very critical for investigations, well, they are not that scientifically updated. So we need to do that. And mandating independent cybersecurity audits. There should be third-party audits of these apps so as to check whether they are violating privacy norms, privacy rules or not. And are they secure from any cybersecurity attack by antisocial elements or hackers or terrorists? So this needs to be done, because if you are introducing digital initiatives, you need to make them robust. Clear? That is it. Now let's quickly shift our focus to third news item, and that is India's demographic turn. Now look, we have talked about this concept called total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is the amount of children an average woman is going to have in India throughout her reproductive life cycle. And a reproductive life cycle is between age 15 to 48. This is the time period in which females can have children. So an average female has some children, okay, like 2 or 3. We take the average of the entire country and we get total fertility rate. Now, if the total fertility rate of the entire country is 2.1, or let's say more than 2.1, that means that country is going through population explosion. If it is at 2.1 exactly, that means it is at population stabilization. Okay, this is known as the replacement level. The number of people that are being born in 1 year are enough to replace the number of people who are dead in that year. Okay, and if it is less than 2.1, significantly less, not very little. Okay, not, if it is 2 instead of 2.1, that is also population stabilization. But if it is significantly less, like 1.4, then we are going through the phase of population decline. Now, throughout our independent India's history, well, our total fertility rate has been significantly higher than 2.1. But recently, it has come out to be 1.9. Now, what impact will this have on India? Let's talk about this, okay? India's demographic turn. Most of you must be thinking that, well, if total fertility rate is less than 2.1 and if India's population is declining, that is a good thing. Might be good thing because India's population is already very high, but it has its own set of negative consequences as well. We'll talk about this. So data released by India's Office of Registrar General and Census Commissioner has revealed a few data points. Our total fertility rate has dropped to 1.9. But still, our population has not started to fall or stabilize. We are still adding 1.3 crore people every year. So population is still booming. Median age shift. The median age in India is now 29.8 years. It is 40 years in China. That means China is becoming old, whereas India is still youthful. This is good thing, right? Now, this is India's average 1.9. There are some regional variations as well. For example, most of the North Indian states like Bihar, UP, Jharkhand still have very high fertility rates, 2.9, 2.6, 2.2. And South Indian states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh have very low fertility rates. Their population is on decline only. If we take an average, then we come to 1.9. Otherwise, some regions of India are very low as far as fertility rates are concerned, and some regions are very high. Okay, so what is happening in these low fertility areas? Shrinking youth bulges, labor shortages, and escalating old age dependency ratio. Old people are rising. Okay, in North Indian states, elevated youth dependency, high youth unemployment, closing windows to build human capital infrastructure. That is a different thing. We'll talk about this. Now let's talk about our demographic dividend. Now, what is demographic dividend? If your country has high youth population, that means your country has high working age population. Because you see, children and old people cannot work. So if your country has a lot of old people, so they are not producing any wealth. They are dependent on the wealth produced by young people. So it is not good for a country to have a large proportion of old people, because old people are already dependent on young people's wealth. Plus, they put a burden on states' finances because of their rising healthcare costs and all. Now, this is known as demographic dividend, that India has a high working age population. But this working age population has a sunset clause, which means these young people are going to get old in some time in future. Okay? And then India's demographic dividend will die down. That sunset clause, as per United Nations Fund for Population, is 2055. So till 2055, India can enjoy its demographic dividend. Okay? The absolute working age cohort is projected to peak. Working age means working age population at 1000 million in 2041, before it will start to decline. This leaves us with a critical 15 to 20 year window to take all the necessary advantage of this workforce. If India wants to become a developed country, we have to do it before 2055, because now we have the time. This window is going to close, okay? Because we have demographic dividend on our side. You understand the point? Now, pressures of demography turn. Till 2055, it's all right. But after that, when our population will decline, what negative consequences we are going to have? Okay, care burden is going to increase, plus loss of gender dividend. Because of our patriarchal society, the care burden of old people in joint families falls on the women of the household in patriarchal setups. So this would increase gender burden. Then informal labor and absent income security. Most of our workforce is informal, okay, in informal areas, and they don't have any pension facility, provident fund facility, so they are vulnerable. There is no income security after they retire. Then chronic diseases and double burden. Okay, they have, I mean, the thing is, when people get old, they require more geriatric care. Already, India is a tropical country, so we suffer from a lot of communicable diseases. Okay, malaria, dengue. And once you get old, you suffer from non-communicable diseases like heart disease, kidney failure and all. So this double burden is going to rise. And then rise of uneconomic schools. This is currently happening in South India. Because because so many people are having so few children because of development, well, there are not many children. So many public schools are closing down in South India. This is already happening. So this will happen pan India after 2055, but this is already happening in South India, these four things. Okay. Plus, this also creates its own set of political challenges also. You see, there is this organization called Finance Commission, which provides a framework for central grants to states. One variable that is looked into before providing grants to states is the population of that state. The state which has higher population receives more funds from the center. Now, South Indian states are not happy with this. So this is going to be a challenge. Plus, there are going to be labor shortages in South India. Now, those labor shortages can be solved if these labor surplus states of North India provide labor, which leads to more internal migration in India. But this creates its own set of societal challenges. There are social backlashes. People don't like outsiders. This is happening. Okay, sometimes it's the language issue, sometimes it's a racial issue, all sorts of things happen. So this is a challenge. Now, what should be our way forward? First of all, we need to transition from quantity to productivity dividend. If our workforce is going to fall, we need to make sure that they are not employed in low income jobs. They are skilled enough to be employed in high income jobs, so that very few people in India contribute so much that our GDP is still high. Economy is still growing. Okay. Then developing compact age inclusive census towns. We need to build more towns to absorb this migration from rural areas into urban areas, because the current infrastructure in existing cities is not enough to absorb this huge swathes of rural migration to cities. So we need to create census towns that absorbs these rural migrations. Then, because informal workers do not have any social security, we need to universalize informal social security, which provides good amount of income to these people who retire after work, these informal workers. Because yes, most of them are going to get old and they require support. Clear? That would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And please do not forget to revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. It's really essential, because just watching this lecture, you will forget these current affairs very quickly in a matter of couple of days. But if you revise it just after watching the lecture, then you'll be able to retain these current affairs for longer periods of time. So do not forget to do that. And I shall see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.